Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer by reading together. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Malcolm Mitchell. He's the author of my very favorite book in the whole wide world. He's also the founder of the Share the Magic Foundation and a huge advocate of World Read Aloud Day. Before we invite Malcolm into the studio, and I forgot to say that he is a former Super Bowl champion playing for the New England Patriots. I want to invite you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. So much great stuff there at the website. If you are a parent, you absolutely want to sign up for our newsletter. Our newsletter is filled with some great resources for families. Tells you what's coming up on the podcast, what you might have missed. Also some great game suggestions, recipes, all sorts of activities for you and your kids. You can also visit our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read Wall of Fame and find the next book to add to your family library. And, of course, if you're an author, you definitely want to check out readingwithyourkids.com. Find out how you can be a guest on the show. Being a guest, it's fun. It's easy. It doesn't cost you a thing. And it gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. We also can let you know all about our Certified Great Read program, which can really help your book stand out from the thousands of books that are published every single month. And you can go to our merch page and be the first in your blog to have your very own Reading with Your Kids t-shirt, coffee mug, or oh so fashionable face mask. That's readingwithyourkids.com. Joining us right now from Atlanta in Georgia. I am so excited. Our guest today, he is the author of my very favorite book in the whole wide world. He also founded something amazing called Read Bowl. He's a big part of World Read Aloud Day. And he just happens to be a former Super Bowl champion playing for the New England Patriots. I have my New England Patriots hoodie on today. Please welcome to the show, Malcolm Mitchell. Malcolm, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. I love that sweatshirt you're wearing.
Oh, thank you. I have sleeves, so it's not quite like Coach B's. So I know people don't want to hear about the Patriots winning, but I'm really excited that your former teammate is going to be playing in the Super Bowl this year. That's exciting.
It is. He's a great guy. I really enjoyed my time playing football with him. He's an extraordinary leader, a great friend. I'm happy for him. I know for the Patriots community, it may be it's kind of like a Sour Patch. It starts off sour, then it sweetens up, you know. You wish he was still on that team, but you're happy because he's been so involved in that community as well.
Yeah, the way I look at it, you know, he did a great job here. He was a great member of the community. He certainly didn't hurt anybody, and he's going off and being successful in a different city. It's all good. It's something I think we should support everybody and just support everybody and celebrate when they're happy and when they're successful.
You know what I would love to see, and we're going to get into the books. I would love to see a massive group of Patriots fans rally behind him and his opportunity in playing in the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. That'd be cool to see.
I hope so, too. Well, I'll rally some of my friends. In the time of COVID, I don't know how much of a rally I could have, but we could be socially distant.
I guess I should have thought about that.
Well, tell us, first off, I'm really excited that you're here. In 2 days' time, the world will be celebrating World Read Aloud Day. Did you ever imagine when you were growing up in school that someday that you'd be looked at as a literacy advocate and somebody celebrating World Read Aloud Day?
I would have never guessed that in a million years. I grew up in an environment that promoted athletics. And while academic achievement was relevant in the lives of some children, it wasn't prominent in the community that I was surrounded by. So this reality of me being a children's book author, having a nonprofit organization, being a crusader for literacy, I think is more evidence to prove how reading can really reshape and empower your life. Because it's through reading that I've been able to take on these new adventures.
Yeah, certainly. It is, we've had a number of different advocates for reading on the show. LeVar Burton was on the show early on in the podcast life. And one of the things he said that was really eye-opening for me was he said that reading was emancipating. And it really was the key that opened up the world for so many different people.
Well, one of our national icons, Frederick Douglass, contributed reading to his ability to be a free man. Mm-hmm. That's a powerful statement to make. Oprah made the same statement in regards to acclaiming her success. And when you have people of that stature, Warren Buffett saying reading is what allowed him to be the successful businessman that he is, I think that's evidence to prove that reading is not just simply reciting words on a page. It's empowering, it's emancipating. It gives you the tool that's necessary to excel in whichever direction you want to go. When I speak to children, I say reading, and this kind of dates me a little bit, at least for the younger audience. I say reading for our brain is like spinach for Popeye.
Yeah, it really is. And it's when you have a kid, and it sounds like you struggled reading, and at some point in your life you just got turned onto it. Do you remember the moment or the week or the year that changed for you?
2012, I believe, is when I became more aware of my issues with reading, and when I also discovered the importance of being a reader. I was in my English 1102 class as a all SEC freshman of the year, praised and loved around campus for my athletic ability. But I remember in that classroom when the teacher asked the student to volunteer to read, how petrified and scared I was that I'd be the student she called on, because I knew about my inability to confidently and proficiently read a passage. And I did not want to feel that way. I felt inferior. I felt less than, and I wanted to strive to be a better version of me. I did not only want to be the best athlete I can be, but I wanted to be the best person. Mm-hmm. And it's through watching interviews with Warren Buffett, it's through watching interviews with Oprah Winfrey that I kind of discovered that in the central theme in all of these people's life, something that they all mentioned at some point was books and reading. So I said to myself, if I want to be the best version of me, I have to introduce books and reading to and it was really tough. It was difficult. I had went 19 years and had never voluntarily picked up a book and read on my own. So when I started that process, it was difficult. It was, some words were too big, some sentences were too long, some books were way too thick. But I kind of took a very football fundamental-like approach, and I started with children's books, which explains why I became a children's book author.
That's, it's a beautiful story. I really love it, but it's also infuriating to think that a young man can get through high school, get to college, and not be a proficient reader here in, well, anywhere, but especially here in the United States.
I hate to say it, but the standards for athletes are lower than the standards for others. And that's just the reality. And I don't think that will I don't think that will ever change, unfortunately.
Yeah.
My SAT score did not need to be what another student who wasn't an athlete needed to be. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality of the situation.
Well, I'm happy that you, found a way for yourself, and it must have taken, I think a lot of kids in that same situation would just kind of look for ways to keep that secret instead of having the courage to kind of admit to yourself that I need some help. And I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to read this picture book. I'm going to read this middle grade novel because that's where I'm at right now, and I want to get better.
Right. Yeah, I had never thought about it in that regard when I was going through the process. Now, we're looking back on it, everything's in hindsight. It does seem a bit interesting that I decided to do that. But it's all about, for me, it was all about being a better me. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't about being embarrassed. It was only about how can I do a better job at being my best self. And once I realized that reading was actually helping me do that, it became very important to me to share that with students who grew up in environments that I grew up in, who don't fully understand the benefits of being a reader, who can't make the connection between being literate and having long-term financial freedom or just success in general. So me sharing that I struggle to read was not a big deal because I realized that there are millions of people who do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. I love your Share the Magic Foundation. Tell us a little bit about that and what kind of things you folks are doing.
I started Share the Magic Foundation in 2016, and our mission is to introduce book ownership into the lives of students who can't afford books, and also to inspire kids to read to a better future. Right now, we are hosting our biggest virtual reading challenge of the year, which is called Read Bowl. And it's an opportunity for kids around the country to compete to see who can read the most minutes within a 4-week time span. So we have virtual events. We were doing in-school events until COVID came about, so we slowed down that. We do a lot of book ownership initiatives where we try to raise money to provide books for children in communities where books are not prevalent. I think the phrase they use is book deserts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think it's so important when, we have public libraries, we have the free little public libraries all around? Why do you think it's so important for kids to own their own books?
Well, there's been studies that have provided me with the information that you can encourage a child to read all you want. If they don't have a book to read, well, how do they put it into practice? Mm-hmm. And there's also been studies that have shown that 1 in 300 children in low-income communities don't have age-appropriate books. So from my perspective, if I want to encourage a child to read, I need to ensure that they have a book to read as well. Mm-hmm. There's also been some studies that have talked about the benefits of a child seeing books in the home, giving them more confidence to pick one up, them becoming more comfortable being surrounded by books. There's plenty of reasons of why book ownership is important, but for me, it comes down to if I want to inspire a child to read, they need to have a book to read.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, a great book for a kid to read would be my very favorite book in the whole wide world. Can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Yes, I wrote this story with my personal journey in mind. There's a character named Henley who struggles with reading. But his teacher gives him this assignment to find his very favorite book in the whole wide world. And he goes on this treasure hunt trying to find that book. He gets help from a librarian. He gets help from a bookstore owner. He gets help from his mother. But the catch, and I won't share too much because I would like for you to read it, but the catch is Henley actually never finds his very favorite book in the whole wide world. he does something even more powerful. And I'll leave it at that.
All right. Now, this book is a bit autobiographical. Now, do you have a very favorite book in the whole wide world?
Oh, that's a good question. I may have a few. I really enjoyed The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. I love reading Other Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. I'm all over the place, to be honest. I like Shoe Dogs by Phil Knight, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I pretty much read any and everything.
Excellent. You know, when I was reading the book blurb for my very favorite book in the whole wide world, and I read about Henley, a great kid who hates to read, I was reminded of something that happened to me back right before COVID hit. I was out at the Chicago Kids Expo and met this lovely family, and the family had mostly little kids, but there was one, I think she was 12 or 13-year-old girl, and we were just chatting, and I had my booth there letting people know about the podcast, but we also had a number of different books from different authors. And I said, hey, what books do you like to read to this young woman? And she said, I hate to read. I don't ever read. I just hate it. And I had this really fun picture book there at the table called The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tarantacranchosaurus. And I said, hey, just read this because there are some funny words. And she was reading it, and she started to laugh. And it was as if somebody kind of opened up her eyes or opened up a curtain for her. And suddenly she was looking, I think she was looking at reading in a completely different way.
Yeah, you know, it's that connectivity that I think a child or a person needs to reading. Mm-hmm. For some people, it's about what good is reading and how can it help me? I think that's the approach that I took. Mm-hmm. And I had never been explained, or it had never been explained to me how reading was beneficial for me personally. Mm-hmm. I was always encouraged that reading would help me pass a test and get a good grade, and I didn't care very much about that, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But once I made that connection that reading would empower me to be a better human being, then it was a no-brainer. I knew I needed to do it. So for some people, it's different things. For some, it's finding the right story, finding the right medium. Some people don't like reading books. Some people like reading magazines, and that's okay too. It's just reading that's needed for our overall development.
Yeah. You know, headed back to something that you were saying earlier about reading being empowering, it really is a way that gives people an opportunity to find out things on their own. They don't have to depend on other people telling them.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
I can have a random idea, and okay, here's an example. I was with the Patriots, and I wanted to learn more about photography. I knew no one who used a camera. I had no clue about shutter speeds or lenses or frame. I had no clue, zero. I went to a bookstore. What bookstore did they have in Foxborough? I think it was Barnes & Noble or Books A Million, either or. Mm-hmm. I went to the bookstore and I picked up a book about photography. I learned how to use a camera in 3 hours. Mm-hmm. Now, I hadn't mastered the craft, but I had a general understanding of how it worked. Mm-hmm. And it was just a random thought, a random idea. I went to the store, picked up a book, and I was immediately empowered to use that camera. That's really cool to have the ability to do that. At that point, you know, I always pose the question, at that point, your possibilities are limitless.
Yeah. Yeah, they really are. You know, here in the podcast, we are always encouraging families to read with their kids, and we celebrate the fact that reading together really builds that bond between parent and child. It helps kids build their vocabulary. But sometimes we forget to remind families that encouraging your kids to read, giving them that skill, is giving them a key to life and really opening up doors for them.
Beautifully said. I don't want to add anything else because I won't say it any better.
Well, I have to ask, because I've been making a living for the past 30 years, traveling around the country, doing magic for kids. I would get in all sorts of trouble if I didn't ask you about your first book, The Magician's Hat.
Yes, The Magician's Hat was kind of created on this magical experience that I had with reading. As a reader, I had no idea that as you read, the images would fly into your head. And even more astounding, when you shut a book, some of those images may still be there, and you carry them with you throughout the day. I thought that was the closest I would ever get to being a part of magic. So I wrote the story, The Magician's Hat, off of the idea that reading was this magical tool that could help children accomplish all of their dreams.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Hey, I want everybody to support the Share the Magic Foundation. Can you tell everybody where they can go and how they can help out?
Yes, please go to readwithmalcolm.com, just like it sounds, readwithmalcolm.com. Look around, see which areas that you think can best serve, and any donation you can make would be very beneficial to ensuring that we continue to get books into the hands of children. Again, that's readwithmalcolm.com. You can also follow us on all platforms at Read with Malcolm.
Yeah. And do you have anything, we mentioned earlier on, you're a big advocate for World Read Aloud Day. I'm just blown away. I'm getting messages from Ghana, from this ambassador of literacy in Ghana. We've struck up a friendship on Twitter, and he's real excited about World Read Aloud Day. Isn't it kind of mind-boggling that there's this thing that's like worldwide that celebrates reading?
It's extraordinary. If you think about everything we just said, this is probably one of the most empowering days throughout the year. Mm-hmm. It's a moment where people around the world commit to reading or reading aloud to a group of children. It's astounding. I'm happy to be a part of it. And it's just really cool that what we believe is true, and that other people around the world understand the same.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a great time speaking with the author of my very favorite book in the whole wide world, the founder of the Share the Magic Foundation, and a big lover of reading, Malcolm Mitchell. Malcolm, thank you so much for being on the show today.
No problem at all. I appreciate you. Anytime. If you need to fill some time, call me.
All right. Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guests will be Matt Eventoff and Thomas Ray Garcia. They're here to celebrate Speechless. It's a really powerful interview. You don't want to miss it. Hey, World Read Aloud Day is happening in just a few days, February 3rd. I would really love it if you could take a picture of you and your kids or your nieces and nephews or grandkids. Just don't pick up any random kids off the street, but make sure you have a kid you have permission to read to. Take a picture of you reading with those wonderful kids. Post it on social media. Tag us at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter, and of course you can post it on our page, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids. We would love to see it. That's right. World Read Aloud Day happening on February 3rd, 2021. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Malcolm Mitchell. Be sure to check out my very favorite book in the whole wide world, and also check out Read with Malcolm. Find out all about the Share the Magic Foundation. I also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Alexia Brown. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, but most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.